Hello, and welcome to Bookish and Unbalanced, the podcast that talks all about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful of mental health in the queer book community. I'm Katie Trapp.
I'm Adrian J. Smith.
And I'm Amy Spencer.
From authors, editors, publishers, readers, and reviewers, we all have a state of mental health and neglect talking about it. Or worse yet, we're ashamed to talk about it. Let's break the stigma. On today's episode, we're interviewing our co-host, Amy Spencer. Amy, hello.
Oh my God, so the cat's just decided now is the time to try and eat my microphone.
So we have guests now. Oh,
special guest star.
So cute.
It's gone. Okay. Hi. I'm Amy Spencer. I'm a sapphic author of romance. I've released 2 books so far, both with mental health aspects to them. I'm also a mum to 2 children, and I have a partner at home, the cat, who you may have just seen, a dog mum as well. Yeah, that's it really. I'm not very exciting.
You are.
I need to know what the cat's name is.
Yeah, what is the cat's name?
The cat's called McCavity. So if you know anything about T.S. Eliot or musical theatre, they're named after McCavity, the mystery cat from Cats.
Oh.
And live up to their name as well.
Cats is one of the musicals I have not seen, but I did sing a bunch from it in a medley in choir in high school.
So see Adrian doing jazz hands.
And hopefully that face.
Was not the favorite part of the medley, that's for sure. So tell me a bit about why you agreed to this podcast when I slid into your DMs in creepy stalker way of, hey there.
Hey. Well, to start with, I was like, Adrian Smith's messaging me. What's Adrian Smith doing messaging me? How does she know who I am? And I had a momentary flash of the fact that it was someone pretending to be Adrian, and that this message was totally not going to be real.
I don't think I'm quite popular enough for people to fake being me yet.
And then I read your little, I say little, it was quite long message, and was really excited about the prospect of being able to do something like this. Like, I'd had a similar idea in my own head, but there's just no way I had the time or the audience or the capacity and the knowledge to do anything like it. So being given the opportunity to be able to do it was really exciting, even though I was kind of thinking, do I still have the time and the capacity to do this? I don't know, but I couldn't pass it up really. So I kind of then jumped onto a Zoom call and thought, I'll have time to prepare for this. This will be fine. Like, this won't happen for a while, and then like a week later, here we are.
For the record, it has been longer than a week.
But so it was just really exciting opportunity to speak about something which I'm really quite passionate about, with a lot of different people and a lot of different experiences, and I think the conversations which are had sometimes are very very focused on like the obvious mental health issues which we know about. And so to have the opportunity to be able to open those conversations up to a wider audience and learn more about it myself was kind of something which was really exciting and interesting to do. And I'd kind of got a little bit of a taste of it because I did the blog train on my social media for World Mental Health Day, which again was more successful and had much more engagement than I ever thought it was going to. So to be able to carry that on outside of just that one day or those, few instances where talking about mental health is the thing to do because there's a day about it or a week about it, and as an event it's happening all the time, it's happening to us all the time, it's part of our everyday lives, so it should be spoken about more, it should be spoken about on an everyday basis.
What are your struggles with mental health?
For me, it started way earlier than I realized. So retrospectively, I am now aware that I suffered with quite severe anxiety when I was a child. The kind of soap opera story of parents divorcing and it not being particularly amicable, and it happened at a time where I, just as a child, was going through that period of transition of moving schools and going from being a young child to teenager, and the combination of everything was massively overwhelming. And it was never formally diagnosed as anything. It was just a consequence of, I'm watching, we might have an intruder. Oh, look at that. It was just a consequence of the circumstances at the time. And then kind of as I grew up and got older, my trigger points were very much like the things I think we expect to struggle with in life: going to university, moving away from home, learning to live on your own, learning to, engage in a new social circle. Things like that were just, while they were really freeing in some ways because I could start again and, go to university and introduce myself as, come out straight away without having to worry about people having any preconceptions of who I was because they've known me for years or whatever. It was also just really difficult because all of a sudden you're making friends and forming relationships with people who you're making the choice to do it, and I think 18-year-olds do it really badly sometimes, because you're still naive and you're still learning, and you can get taken in by people and things change and you're not always emotionally prepared for those things. But then I guess for me, my next big event which kind of really had an effect on my mental health was having my first child. So I went from a very, very high pressured, very busy job 5 days a week to all of a sudden not having anything to do. I was on maternity leave, which over here is very generous. And babies don't do anything for like the first 6 months. Like they just lay there, you feed them, they poop, so that's it. That's literally it, all day, every day. And so it was a real kind of like severe swing in how I was spending my time, and I really struggled with that change. And I mistakenly put it down to just not being cut out, to just like not be doing anything. And so went back to work very quickly. I promptly lasted one whole day before I then came home and totally broke down and kind of like just sat on the floor screaming at my partner, not really knowing what to do, not really knowing what was wrong, not knowing how to vocalize it. I didn't know where I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I fitted in either world. I wasn't doing particularly good at either role. And my doctor at the time kind of went, okay, so you were struggling to go back to work. Work's the problem here. Have 2 weeks off. Signed a sick note, gave me some tablets, sent me on my way. At no point did he ask, and how have you felt bonding with your child? And it's only kind of like years later when I can look back on it objectively and I can say that the chances are, if it was any other doctor, any other time, any other questions asked, I'd probably most likely have been diagnosed with postnatal depression during that time. Because although, like, I was happy that my child was here and healthy, and we clearly it wasn't an accident. Like, there was a lot of planning which went into it. I really struggled to fit into that role as mother, like, because in my head there's very much like a societal expectation of what that role looks like, and I don't fit into it. And so I kind of really struggled to know how to be who I was and be that person as well. And that kind of period really, it took a long time to get over it. And it took a lot of things which, sorry, she's now just decided she's now it took a long time to get over it. It took a long time of, like, even probably over the past like year or so, for me to realize that actually there's no kind of like blueprint of how to do it, of how to be, the best mother I can be, the best parent I can be, is the one who's happy and comfortable with myself. But that's like an ongoing battle constantly. So it manifested itself, that period of time manifested itself into not only depression, but also really severe anxiety. So because there was two fundamental issues, like, I didn't know how to be a parent. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to go and do the things which I should have been doing as a new mother. I didn't want to go to mother and baby groups or meet other people, but then when I had the opportunity to go back to work, it manifested itself in anxiety attacks. So I would, start the day to, get ready for work, and the palpitations would start and the panic would start, the feeling nauseous would happen, and it would just all spiral. And then the length of time between, getting up and reaching that point would slowly over the days get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point where, I wasn't even reaching work before it would happen. It would literally be, I'd get out of bed, I'd be having an anxiety attack.
So I have a question.
Yeah,
we're going off script a little bit, but
sorry.
no, you're not. I am. Just looking, I really like to study patterns. And so just looking at patterns from when you were a child and struggling with anxiety to as an adult and struggling with anxiety, did you see similar patterns going on in there? And did the coping mechanisms that you had to do as a child change to what you had to do as an adult?
The patterns were very similar. I think that's the way my anxiety manifested itself as an adult was what made me realize that that's what I was going through when I was a child. That kind of, the fear, feeling sick and or having headaches or your heart racing, and the length of time that it would take between starting your day and that kicking in, and the intensity of it was very much what I remembered from feeling as a child when that happened. I guess because it wasn't ever diagnosed as anything when I was 11 or 12, there was no coping mechanisms. It was very much just like a push through until you get back to some sort of normality, till you can go back to school again. Now I'm much more adept at seeing those early warning signs and seeing the situations which can trigger them, and having things in place which can either take away or minimize that trigger, or if it does happen, take myself out of that situation. Like, I think when I was younger, I would be, and I still am, like, none of us are perfect, and I'm like the last person to say that I'm necessarily brilliant at always managing my mental health. But I think with my anxiety, definitely more than, say, my depression, I'm better at recognizing when things are gonna have the potential to spiral, when I have the potential to progress onto like a full-blown anxiety attack. I will try to put in place the coping mechanisms, or I hesitate to say coping mechanisms because that makes me sound like I've actually got a coping mechanism rather than just like but yeah, I think sorry.
There are many forms of coping mechanisms, some useful, some not useful, some good, and some definitely not.
Yeah. I think if anything, I'm better at recognizing it, which I think is definitely the first step in being able to then put in place whatever coping mechanisms you have, whatever positive coping mechanisms you have. But yeah, I think you're just determined to get a guest spot, aren't you?
They're emotional support pussy.
Well, ironically, the cat was bought because my partner went, let's get a kitten for months. Let's get a kitten. I kept going, no, we've got 2 children and a dog. Like, we need any more chaos in this household. And then she took me to see a litter of kittens, and I was like, oh, this one's so adorable, and it climbed up and curled up on my shoulder and was like, fell asleep there, and I was just like, oh, it's making me so calm, it's so lovely. And she's like, well, if it'll help your anxiety, then let's get the cat. And then and then we brought the cat home, and she's caused me nothing but grief ever since.
You walked right into that one.
I know.
Just letting you know.
She saw me come in a mile off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask how, and you touched on this briefly in your introduction, how mental health carries over into what you write. And I wanted you to touch on that a bit more. So how does mental health carry over into what you write?
I'm an angst lover. I love reading and writing stories where there's an element of pain and suffering for my characters. I guess I guess in some it's possibly really obvious. Like, I think I've used it as a way to I guess it is like a way of therapy in some respects. and that wasn't like that wasn't any reason, like it wasn't for any particular reason. Like I didn't have the intention of doing it, because I didn't have the intention of publishing the thing. So it was just like, you know, it was written in, you know, manifesting my own experiences and feelings and things into someone else. And it's very so when I wrote Broken, one of the characters suffers from anxiety, and again, it wasn't ever intended to be read by anyone, but it was really cathartic to be able to almost, I find it really hard if someone asks me, what does it feel like, or how does it feel, to adequately describe what an anxiety attack feels, or what it feels to be, you know, extremely depressed to the point of not wanting to go out. Like, I think for people who, especially for people who haven't gone through it, the idea of just saying, I can't leave the house, just seems totally ridiculous. Like they literally just go, but you just open the door and walk out, and it's like, no, like literally it feels like there's something physically stopping me from taking that last step over the threshold. And it's a really difficult concept for someone who's not experienced that to grasp. I mean, when you then also suffer from anxiety and depression, it's even more confusing, I think, because like the depression makes me not want to leave the house, and then the anxiety makes me really anxious about staying in sometimes. Like it's a weird concept. Like they don't seem like they should be able to exist at the same time, but they absolutely do. And to be able to write it in a form and transpose it onto another character, I found it a lot easier to explain those things than I do if someone just asks me outright. With The Storm Within Her, so I wrote Broken. I technically started The Storm Within Her before Broken, but I wrote Broken and then published that first, and it kind of gave me a little bit of confidence to then finish and publish Storm, because that was very much a much heavier book in terms of its mental health themes than Broken, because it really is quite like heavy and dark in places. Like it's not a straight road story, and I think that was really important. Like I guess one of the things which I always want to, or I definitely did with that book, was didn't want it to seem like you can have something bad happen to you, it affect your mental health, someone comes along, you fall in love, and the mental health aspect's gone. Everything's happy, everything's shiny, it's all like sunshine and rainbows at the end.
Do you, and
because it's not
struggle too, is that a struggle for you to have a happily ever after?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Like
We'll just put it out there.
Just throw that one out there.
That's one of my main struggles with the happily ever afters. Like, it's not.
For me, I think for me, like personally, I have a real problem with, even though I like, you know, will write and tell people that it's, you know, a really bumpy road and it's not always straightforward, and there are going to be times when, you know, it could come back. I'm not saying it would always, you know, rear its head again, because I think it's individual for everyone. But for me, it always surprises me. Like I almost think that I have got happy ever after because I've had a really good period of mental health, and then it just like sneaks up behind you and smacks you over the head and goes, actually, no. No, you've been happy for far too long. Things have been smooth running for far too long. Here you go. And I think so. I don't think like, yeah, it's possible, but it's always in the back of my mind that maybe it's going to be a really bumpy ride to get to the happy ever after.
got to work for.
No, ask me again in a few years. I might have a different answer for you.
I'll ask you again next week and you'll give me a different answer. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'll have a different answer.
No, I don't know. It just made me think, because you write romance, and one of the requirements of a romance is to have a happily ever after. And it's something that I definitely struggle with when I write romances. So I was curious. It just made me think that you might also have that struggle.
I think sometimes I kind of like, because I think possibly because I don't write in order. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think if I wrote from start to end and like just went chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, I think I could potentially struggle with getting to that happy ever after, because I just throw another roadblock in the way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know they've been happy for 3 chapters now, something's going to have to go wrong. But I think because I kind of don't write in order, sometimes I already have an idea of what I want that end to look like. And I don't think I ever write it in a way that is in respect to like the mental health aspect, like a final thing. Do you know what I mean? Like I try to always write things, or try to always ensure that have that, doubt's not the right word, but that kind of like knowledge that things are just, there's a good chance that things are gonna, be bumpy. Or like if I had put an epilogue in and it's a couple of years later, then there'll always be like a hint of things haven't been plain sailing. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is where we are now, but it's not been an easy road to get here. Like, it's probably not been as bad as what's happened in the main bulk of the book, because if they had like another huge event, then I'd just write like another huge book. But but I always try to, I guess, show both sides of it. Like, I'm really aware of trying to like show that it's not two-dimensional. Like, if you're suffering from depression, or you're going through that, like a period of time like that or whatever, it's majoritively all, it's difficult and it's dark and it's consuming, but there are still moments, there are still like little chinks of light. There's still sometimes just like one little thing that makes you laugh or makes you smile, and those things still happen. It's just that they're swallowed up by everything else that's going on, or whatever your mind is telling you, or it gets lost. But they happen, they're there. Like, it's not all just like an absolute sea of black all the time, for me anyway.
Since you don't write in order, do you wait to do those heavier scenes when you're in?
No, they're the first ones that get written.
Jump in.
No, they're the first ones that get written.
So you add the fluff later, the happy.
Oh yeah.
They add the sex scenes first thing in the morning when they wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a strict daily schedule. Angst happens very late in the evening. Sex happens very early in the morning.
I'm not going to ask the question.
I'm not either, but we're probably thinking the same thing.
I am sure we are, as is everybody else that will listen to this later on. I am curious though, switching topics slightly, how do you define angst? What is angst to you in a book?
This feels like a trick question, doesn't it?
It's not. I had a conversation with Miranda McLeod one time because I read one of her books and I was like, dude, you so could have leaned into the angst in this book, and she didn't. And she came back to me with the question of what is angst. And I was like, well, crapola, now I must define it. And so I had to sit for a hot minute and go, what is angst? How would I define angst? And I think it was a really apt and adequate question, because I think we define it differently.
I've Googled it before because I didn't know if I could label my book angst or not. I still don't know.
Still don't know?
I still don't know.
Do you have any idea? Do you want my definition of it?
Yeah. And then I could just nod along, like I was like, yeah, that's
yeah, that's right.
Give you long enough to Google examples.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Google is so much help. So my definition of angst is that you're leaning into the really uncomfortable emotions.
I like that definition. I think that's right. I think that's it's really weird because like I feel like if I write it, I know it what it is, and if I read it, I know what it is. But then if you ask me, like I'm like, no, I'm lost for words now. But I think it is. I think it's that I know what it's not. It's not. It's not the it's not the stories where two people meet and there's and they hit it off great and then they go on a date and there's no miscommunication and there's no exes around or jealous friends or families who don't agree with things and it's not that. I think there's varying degrees of angst. I think there's different sources of it, but it's very much based, I think, in the difficult emotions which come either from being in that situation, in that relationship, or dealing with outside influences which can cause difficulties within that relationship. But yeah, I'm still in your definition now, taking that.
Yeah, and I talk frequently too about internal angst and external angst, right? When characters have internal angst, right? When they are uncomfortable with emotions, feelings, relationships, etc. And then external angst, which are those things that put them into those situations. But I was just curious because you said you write angsty books, and I'm always curious what people mean by that. And I get asked that question a lot too. I don't know if you get asked that question, but like I see it pop up in groups or whatever, like I want a really angsty book, and I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm not sure people actually can define it. I think it's something we all kind of know it when we see it, but other than that, we don't really know.
Well, the next question that we had written down, it looks like you've already talked about it. The heaviness of one of your books was a lot heavier than the other one.
Yes.
When you were writing it, how did it impact like your mental health?
Is that why you stopped and started?
I think it is quite cathartic, but in kind of like a weird after the fact way. I think because there was quite a period of time between me experiencing that similar those that similar situation in my actual life, and when I put it down on the page, I already had a certain level of distance from it. I think my biggest struggle with Storm in particular was how far to push it. There's a bit in Storm where, like I've alluded to, kind of like the path of the character Seth kind of coming out of their depression is quite straightforward, and then I could have quite easily just carried that on and then got to the end of the story, but I didn't want to. And there's a situation that happens in the book which kind of knocks her back, and it's something quite innocuous and it's something quite small, but it kind of just like spirals and like buries inside her head, and she can't stop from thinking about it. And I think that's kind of like very true for a lot of people who do suffer with depression sometimes. Like, it's not the big things, it's not the huge, nothing like explosive has to happen to set you off down that spiral. Like, sometimes it can just be the smallest comment or a look, or for the love of God, never email me just going, can we chat? Because like I will replay every conversation I've ever had with you for 6 months, working out when I've offended you. But it was a really small comment, and it spirals in her head to the point where she resorts to old negative coping mechanisms, shall we say. And I couldn't I really struggled with whether to. I wrote it when, I've written this, I think I've written it and I've approached it from the right angle, and it's not gratuitous and it's not, glorifying it. And then I went, oh, but do I really need this in here? Shall I just cut out that chunk of the book and just skip to the end where they're happy? And that was, I didn't. I kept it in because I think it was really important, because it had been part of that character's past, like Seth had spoken about it before. And it was really important for me to kind of, again, show that it's not always straightforward, and it's not always, going from A to B. And actually you can be in a loving relationship and you can have the support of people, but sometimes that really doesn't matter. Like, you can be in the best relationship ever, the happiest marriage ever, you can have everything you've ever wanted, but it really doesn't make a blind bit of difference when you get into that mental headspace, because your head will just tell you a whole load of crap which isn't true. And it was really, it was really important for me to show that kind of that setback, and how great it can be, and how devastating it can be on both parties. Like, at no point during that book was Kate, the other character in it, the unaffected or innocent in their kind of like contribution sometimes either. They didn't, they were lost and they were finding it difficult to understand, and they struggled with it themselves, and how to support Seth. And that's really important, I think, as well, in books with a mental health aspect. I think the perfect partner does not exist. Like, and they can be supportive, but it doesn't matter how supportive they are. Sometimes it doesn't matter if they do have all the right things to say. Like, it can still like, throw you off sometimes, make it really hard to believe that any of that's true.
For sure. Well, we are coming to the end of our time together, so we have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I think so.
You think so?
Let's do it. Yeah. I don't know. These are the ones I'm going to struggle on now. Do you realize that? Like, I'm going to just like have a total, like, I'm not even going to remember anything. I'm just going to like
First thing that comes to your head.
Yeah, just the first thing that comes to your head.
That's not a wise thing sometimes.
Definitely not a wise
thing later.
The first relevant thing that comes to your head. Okay, let's go. What is your favorite source of caffeine?
Black coffee.
What is your dream destination vacation?
Well, that depends whether I'm taking the children or not, surely. Like, I'd love to take the kids somewhere, for a lovely family holiday, and take them to Australia or the States or somewhere. But if it's just me, anywhere which is quiet with a bar and a pool and a book.
Where did you see kindness today?
I was picking my eldest up from school, and one of her school friends was upset and really proper sobbing their eyes out. And my daughter went up to find out what was wrong with her. She was the only one left in the playground, and she went up to her to see whether she was okay. It was really sweet.
That is very sweet. What's your philosophy on good mental health?
I want to say do as I say, not as I do, because I'm really crap at managing my own mental health. Really good at telling everyone else to take care of themselves. I'm really crap at doing it myself.
All right. And where did you find joy this week?
The fact that my youngest, who's just started school, still gives me a cuddle when they go to school every morning and leave me at the classroom door. And the fact that when their other mother does it, they don't get a cuddle. But we're not allowed to mention that.
I might also have that like sick thrill of joy in my life that my youngest also still loves to cuddle me and always gives me a hug when I pick her up from school, but never gives my spouse a hug ever. And he stands there like with his arms open, like huggy, and she's just like, "Here's my backpack, bye."
Yesterday we both picked him up from school and my eldest ran straight towards my other half and then got two in front of them and literally swerved around them and and I was stood behind and I was like, hi.
That is every day in our life. All right. Okay, folks. So this is our second episode of Bookish and Unbalanced. And Katie and I would love to thank Amy for sharing with us today. We also want to thank our listeners for tuning in and getting to know 1/3 of our host trio. In our next episode, we'll talk to Katie Trapp. And you're not going to want to miss that. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to keep up to date with our latest episodes. Sign up for the newsletter as well. And until next time, take care out there. And remember, we are all in this together. Oh, papers. We have to throw papers.
Now I got to get them before my dog gets to them and chews them.